and Rachel Yates, who are here. Renee actually lives in Fontana and Rachel lives in Denver, but they are our Louisville representatives. And Renee is the Regional Development Manager of World Mission in the Western region. Rachel is the Church Support Associate in the Western region. So,
and y'all are in the Western region.
we are the Western region, and they are here in person today. I'm just going to tell you the very exciting thing about them being here that I have experienced as a mission volunteer in my church. For about 3 years, I've been trying to connect with chaplains that our PCUSA are associated with in war zones, as our church has a soldier ministry program, and I have not got anywhere in 3 years. So Rachel is now our new point person, and I asked her last week if she could help me, and 2 days ago she emailed me 3 names of chaplains and also the person in charge of this ministry. So there is a real hands-on example of what these 2 ladies can do for us as mission volunteers. So please take their names, hear what they have to say, and call them with your mission questions, because there's a lot of great things PCUSA is doing.
Well, and we are PCUSA. So of course we want to learn about what you're doing as well and be able to lift that up to other congregations around the country. But part of my role, whoa, that was exciting. People are celebrating already. Part of my role is to be of support to you, to help you if, to the extent you want to deepen your connections with Presbyterian World Mission. And Renee works more with individual major donors who have a passion for World Mission and are looking for an outlet for that, so we're glad to be with you today. One of the things we want to start with is a little bit just hearing from you and your mission involvement is how have you been challenged in your efforts to do faithful and effective mission? What are some of the challenges that you face?
Language.
Language. Trying to communicate across multiple languages.
Culture.
How so?
Like let's say you learn the language, but like if you do your accent wrong, you could offend somebody by accident, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe something that you can say here in America might be, it's not acceptable like in China
Sure.
or something. Especially addressing your elders.
Huh?
Getting congregation members to join the mission teams, join the mission committees.
Interest in the congregation.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good. And just one moment.
Identifying local needs, even here in the
Okay.
US.
Along with getting members interested, I think in our church, one of the challenges we face is getting younger people involved. Youth are very much involved. Older people are very much involved, but in that middle area, the most active people, I think, is where our focus is and our greatest challenge.
Yeah. You've got people with families and they're going a million different directions,
That's right. Their calendars are full for years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
I think to get people to shift their paradigm to kinds of things what we were hearing this morning from the keynote speaker as to moving forward relationally. And I'll give you, if I can, just 2 examples. We have one ministry that is feeding the homeless that always gets a gazillion volunteers. We have another one that we partner with another church to work with the working poor. And we have Bible studies and we give food and we give gifts at Christmas, those kinds of things. But still, we can't get volunteers to do that. So I am surmising that, it's great to go help the homeless, but nobody is connecting
With
And so that's a challenge.
So if you didn't hear, she's talking about kind of the paradigm shift that we need in order to do effective missions, similar to what Bryant Myers was talking about today. There are certain missions that we feel like, oh, we can just kind of, I've heard this term, parachute in, do some good, and then we're gone. You know, we didn't have to form a relationship, we're just gone. We feel good. And how do we begin to change that? I did hear in the last session, we talked about a couple of books that might be useful if you're looking for your mission committees to kind of study something to begin to make that paradigm shift. One is Toxic Charity by Robert Lupton, who's a Presbyterian ruling elder out of Atlanta, and the other was When Helping Hurts. And that one, I am told, you can download for free this week or something.
This month.
This
It's
month?
it's
And-
a free book.
ChristianAudio.com. I don't know if there are any, connection or hooks. You have to buy one, get one. But ChristianAudio.com is the website for the book When Helping Hurts. It's got a little bit longer title, but both of those are really good resources for groups to study. They gave you some practical examples, and they're kind of useful. Anybody want more money, more time, more bodies to do all the things, that are out there? Yes, sir.
Could you give me the author of Toxic Charity again?
Robert Lupton. Oh, yeah.
Spell it?
Lupton.
Thank you.
So, we see that congregations face all of these kinds of dilemmas. And one way that we talk about trying to get around that is by kind of changing the historical dynamic of how we've done mission into how we do mission today.
So, we as the Presbyterian Church have been at this global mission work for 177 years this year. And I might, as a side note, let you know that the National Church was urged into global mission by, does anyone know? Presbyterian women. They were actually doing global mission before the National Church took it on, but 177 years this year. And this is an analogy of how we did mission back then. We had the National Church that sent the missionaries. All of the money was given to the National Church, and we as the National Church body sent the missionaries there who did the work there. And across the wide ocean that, there really wasn't very much connectionalism. We learned a lot about kind of how not to do things over those 177 years, as well as how to do things more effectively. But today's world is a little bit different. Today, everybody's got a boat in the water, okay? There are more than 10,000 sending agencies rather than the National Church. Every congregation has someone going on a mission trip, someone doing mission in a foreign country. And there are pluses and minuses to both of those. When it's one sending agency, it's really focused and it's organized and you know what's going on, right? In this kind of world, the benefit is that there's a lot of people that are gaining awareness of what's going on in the world and how people are living in different places, but we may have 5 of those boats in this canal all going to Nicaragua, and none of them knowing what the other's doing and not coordinating. I've heard stories of 4 different church groups going to the same community in Mexico over a 6-month period and painting the same medical clinic a different color. They probably don't need that. But as Dr. Myers said, they're not about to tell you don't come help us because they do need help. But we need to figure out a way to kind of organize this in a way that makes us more effective. And PCUSA's world mission, our goal is to do faithful and effective mission in the world. So we are in nearly 50 countries throughout the world. Only in places where we have a global partner, someone local in that country, either the Presbyterian Church, sometimes another church, or a local agency that we are working with and has asked for a mission coworker to be there, to be doing the work that they're doing and who is guiding the work that they're doing. So we have our global partners. And as we were trying to discern how do we be more faithful and effective in our mission, we asked our global partners. And they said, borrowing a story from Hunter Farrell, who he and his wife served in Peru for a number of years, he used a Peruvian term, yecta, which is a drizzling rain. He said, you know, this is like yecta that gives the anticipation that it's going to nourish the soil, but the soul too probably, but it doesn't really do that. They said, what we want you to do is to go deeper with us. You know, this is great because there's lots of awareness, but we're really not making an impact. So we began to gather Presbyterians from this country, our global partners, and our mission coworkers to do that and to be able to begin to focus so that we could be more faithful and effective in our mission.
In essence, you'll see in the, well, you can barely see it here. There are a few boats here that have some ties together. They're connected. And we really want to increase that connectionalism across all the communities of mission practice. Our global partners, our mission coworkers, and our congregations working together. Here in Los Ranchos Presbytery, you've got some wonderful resources. The Worldwide Missions Partnership that can provide grants to the extent that you've had congregations coming together to work together. The Los Ranchos Presbytery itself has some fabulous resources, and you're lucky to have that. Not all presbyteries do. So I would encourage you to investigate what more there is available here. What if, for example, rather than each church kind of supporting its own mission, there were some things that you could agree on? You know, a mission coworker, a country mission, something that you all could work together. Then those questions of time and resources and, you know, experience and kind of all the rest of them, you begin to draw on that connection. You also have, ta-da! We do hope to be a resource for you all to the extent that you are just looking for information, whether it's chaplains in Iraq. I've had questions about how do I get a devotional for a mission trip, or I don't know. I field all sorts of really strange requests, and I'm happy to do that. That is my role, and it's my passion both.
And we also have, as I said, we've got mission coworkers, nearly 200 of them in 50 countries around the world, who are places where you can begin to build relationships with the people in that country. So if you have a particular interest in a country, identify a mission coworker who is there, begin to communicate with that mission coworker about making a trip there, what kinds of things might you find, might you be interested in. So, you know, those folks are out there working in the cultures. They know the language and the culture, and they can help you maneuver through some of those things. We also have 4 area coordinators, different areas of the world. Africa, I mean, they're big areas, so Africa is one of them, but those folks who are in Louisville are really very much in tune with the issues of the region. They travel there usually at least a couple of times a year, so they really are very much in touch with what's going on. We can help you identify those folks if you're interested in contacting them. And then also we have, as we talked about going deeper, we identified 3 critical global initiatives. That's a teaser, we're going to tell you later. But we have a catalyst in each one of those areas whose role it is to be out in the country, in the communities of the churches, gathering Presbyterians around those issues. So those folks are available as well.
And a couple of just other resources that you want to keep in mind that we have. The Mission Crossroads magazine is available. It's a free publication. It will come to you probably 3 times a year, I think. If you're interested in that, there's a sign-up sheet on each of the tables. There's a place where you can check for magazine. I also send out an e-letter once a month called Window into World Mission, and I pick a letter from a mission coworker that I really liked that month as I read them as they come in, condense it down into one page and send it out. And a lot of folks like that. If you want to receive the e-letter, just check that on the sign-up sheet as well.
I might say too that Mission Crossroads magazine, you can get that electronically as well.
Mhm.
So it's not just a hard copy if you're
Yes.
interested in that magazine.
And we've got some extra copies here you can take with you.
Or downstairs on the table, our display table, there's some
Yeah.
past issues and things, so.
I really quickly wanted to show you some things on the website because a lot of people find that it's difficult to navigate this.
Me too.
But this is the Presbyterian Church USA website, which is pcusa.org. And down at the bottom of that first screen, there is a little tiny piece that says World Mission. If you go into that, it'll look something like this. And there's just a lot of wonderful resources in here. Mission Connections near the top is where you can find all of our mission coworkers. And you can organize it either by country or by name. You'll find their letters, their blogs, their videos, so you can stay in contact with them. Mission Crossroads includes not only the magazine, but an online community if you do want to go into different groups and blog. Mission Service, if you're interested in being a mission worker. Mission Trips, that's got a whole bunch of links to different resources you can use for your trips. So a lot of wonderful things here, and I wanted to point out specifically this little thing, Presbyterians at Work World Map. It looks like a graphic, it's actually an interactive map, and you can click on it to get to, for example, a part of the world. And if you want to more information about Guatemala, for example, you'd click on that, and it would take you to the Guatemala page. It would tell you who are the mission coworkers in Guatemala, what's some recent news, who are our partners in Guatemala with whom we're working. It also has presbytery partnerships. If other presbyteries are actively involved in Guatemala, it'll tell you, you can click on those and find out who the contacts are, so that our boats stay tied together. You know, it's not that we're prohibited from going out in our boat, but at least we have a good navigation system to offer. This country actually has a mission network. It's congregations from around the country that have said our focus is Guatemala, and we want to be able to share those resources. They often do conferences together and have their own website and things. So some really good information up here. Having talked a little bit about connecting and enabling us to do mission, I also want to be alert to the fact that we can get kind of diffuse in how we're doing mission, what we call mishmash mission. And we have a flavor of the month. I know a lot of congregations that say every month we do a new mission. And I also hear from some of those churches that they're exhausted because they don't have the manpower, and you have congregations that are kind of waning interest. They're weary from just this endless variety. And there have been studies to show that our brains are happier when we have fewer choices. That when we're faced with this whole wonderful case of different flavors, it can be overwhelming. And we start to second guess ourselves, and we get weary, and we think, well, maybe we should have 2 scoops. But if we just had chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, we would pick one and we would be very satisfied with it. The key for you all as mission leaders is to make your chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry really good. You know, really taste good. Because that's when you get people coming back and wanting to be more actively involved. And you get, hopefully, some of the younger group more actively involved when the mission, the quality of the mission is so deep and rich, not just the variety of mission. we'll work through some examples of how to do that. But I want to have a moment of confession first, which is Presbyterian World Mission was kind of a mishmash for a long time. We just did a lot of different things. We're hoping to kind of correct that a little bit.
And that's why, as I said, we brought folks together when our partners said, we want you to go deeper. So how are we going to focus this? And it was actually over a couple of different conferences that we brought people together, Presbyterians from this country, our global partners, and our mission coworkers together and said, okay, what are they? Which ones of these flavors do we need to pull out, and how are we going to focus our resources, our energy, and our people, our time? And so those two conferences both were held in Dallas. They called them Dallas 1 and Dallas 2. That was really imaginative, wasn't it? But the first one, they identified 3 critical global initiatives, three areas where we're going to focus. The first one was addressing the root causes of poverty. Root causes, particularly as it impacts women and children, because women and children tend to be so disproportionately impacted by poverty. So that focus. And we identified, the second one helped us to identify campaigns and a catalyst for each one of those areas. So the catalyst I spoke about earlier for our poverty alleviation is Frank Dimmock. He and his wife Nancy have served as mission coworkers in Africa for decades. Side note, Nancy is remaining in, she's moving from Lesotho to Zambia, where we are going to open up one of our newest young adult volunteer sites in Zambia next year. So if you're interested in the Young Adult Volunteer Program, we didn't have time to put it in this program, but see us. That's really exciting. We're wanting to triple that program in the next couple of years, 3 or 4 years. So that was the first one. The second one is reconciliation among cultures of violence, including our own. Back up just to poverty. The campaign for poverty was, we're focusing on education. And the campaign is to provide quality education for 100,001 children by 2020. I think the message is we're not stopping at 100,000. And that doesn't just mean across the ocean. That means 100,000, we know in this country that there are children who need quality education that aren't getting it. So those catalysts will be out working to try to garner interest and support and learn about the things that are going on in your own communities in those areas as well. The Reconciliation Initiative, our catalyst is Shannon Beck, who has done work in domestic violence areas, human trafficking, those kinds of things. And our campaign there is, here's an ambitious one for you, to end violence against women and children. And put a date on that one. But that's Shannon Beck, B-E-C-K. And so that's our Reconciliation Initiative. And the third, all of these are equal importance. There's no hierarchy in this. The third, our partners were telling us, you're not Heifer International. You're not Habitat for Humanity. You are the church. We want you out there proclaiming the good news of the love of God in Jesus Christ. And so evangelism is our third critical global initiative. Our catalyst is a young man by the name of Haemin Lee. He is Korean, educated both in Korea and here in this country, highly educated, dynamic, energetic. I got to meet him at Big Tent, and he's just a wonderful young man. Our campaign in evangelism is to train pastors for community development. So not just the theological education, but also training them for community transformation, training them in community development. Real quick, specific example. In Madagascar, we have a mission coworker, Dan Turk, who has for many years been developing strands of fruit trees that grow well and produce well in Madagascar, and in sustainable ways. So what they're doing there is, for every seminary graduate, when a pastor graduates from seminary, before he goes out into his community, he's given 20 fruit trees. And he is taught how to cultivate them and how to propagate them. So when he goes back to his community, he or she now has fruit that they can have for food for their family. They have fruit that they can sell in the marketplace, but they also know how to propagate these trees so that they can help the rest of the community members be able to plant these trees and have food and resources for income as well.
Some congregations have said, we are really enthusiastic about these and we're engaged in them. Others have said, well, we have a slightly different focus. But whichever it is, I think the question and the challenge for you all is, how do you discern what your congregation's call is? So that you're not just doing everything because someone asked. But how do you begin to identify what is really at the core of our passion for mission? And I think some of these questions can help you do that. What are the best qualities of this mission activity? You're doing something, why are you doing it? Is it just longevity? We've always done it. Is it a distant relationship that somebody's uncle, went to Thailand and they came back and now you're doing that? Understanding why you're focused on a particular mission is important. Can we get that same quality in another organization that maybe lines up better with what we want to do? What is it that we are called to do as the church? Not just we're good people, but we are the church, uniquely called. And then begin to identify a list of criteria that will help you as you're faced with new requests. To be able to say, that doesn't really necessarily line up with our criteria for mission. Not that this will be written in stone, obviously that will change over time, but beginning to discern that call is important. So here are a couple of things that we've talked to churches about that seems to resonate, to get fewer flavors perhaps, but richer taste. As you know, when in the book of Acts, Jesus left us, he said, I want you to go out into Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. It wasn't just a focus on, in essence, local mission. It wasn't just global, but it's all of that. So how do you take that wide geographic area and then say, but I'm trying not to do mishmash mission? And one way is to say, we're going to focus how we do that. So what I'd like is y'all to stand up. If you're doing local mission anywhere, please stand up. Any local missionites? If you are also doing mission regionally, say in the greater LA area, San Diego, Los Ranchos Presbytery, remain standing. If you're doing work in difficult places like, well, let me say it this way. If you're doing work internationally, remain standing. Oh, and some of you will come back up. If you're doing work in difficult places, maybe kind of those dark places like prisons, working with addicts, remain standing. So you see, and now you get to rest. Thank you. We tend to gravitate maybe to one or the other or a few of them. But to be across all of them can be difficult. But what if we took one example? I'm just going to take one of them that's one of our critical global initiatives of sharing the good news. Help me think through right here, how could we share the good news locally? What are some ways of doing that?
Start by inviting to the church.
Inviting people to your church. That's an easy one. Maybe have a home-based Bible study. Prayer group that meets in the coffee shop. There's lots of easy ways to do that locally. What about the greater area? Presbytery-wide, greater Los Angeles. How could we share the good news there? Well, I think about, there's a young adult volunteer site in Hollywood. You've got young adults there who would love a connection with you. Have them connect with you. Find out who your seminary students are in the area. Maybe there's some outreach you can do at that level.
Do you have new worshiping communities that are springing up in your presbytery?
New church developments, all of it. Samaria, helping to share the good news in the prisons, in the addiction centers, and then to the ends of the earth. You know, a lot of you are traveling overseas to work, or you're supporting missionaries who are. That's one way, is to say, if we can identify a core area, sharing the good news, poverty alleviation, you pick your own. If we can pick a core area and then begin to see how that can translate geographically across a wide area, you're still focused on one key thing that seems core to you and important, is a passion, but you're looking at how it impacts at multiple levels. Another is gifts of the people. I'll let you hand this out. We've got the same little diagram we're going to hand out to you to do an activity. We do mission in different ways. Some of it's hands-on, you know, it's real concrete. We're working at the food bank or at the soup kitchen. We are actually there. We're doing the hands-on kind of work. Another is empowerment, which would be, if I'm following that same example, why are there hungry people coming to the food bank or the soup kitchen week after week? What is it in their lives that may need some assistance? Is it an ESL class? Is it a citizenship class? Is there something that we can do in partnership? That's empowerment. And the last is advocacy, which is who do we need to talk to change the system so that people don't have to come to the food bank month after month after month. That people can get the education they need to empower them to change their life. And this is nothing that's unique to PCUSA. I mean, this is just different ways that we engage in mission, and people are going to be interested in different pieces of that. Some may have a real gift for advocacy, but they don't want to work in a soup kitchen. To the extent your mission activities engage at those levels, you can broaden the circle. And you may find that particularly different age groups are going to be interested in different things. The advocacy piece and the empowerment may attract a much different age group than, for example, the hands-on. So, what I'd like to have you do, actually I'll skip back for that, is on your sheet of paper, begin to write down some of your mission activities that you do at your church and put them into the right box, if you're the right circle, we're not boxes. Perhaps they're going to overlap and you'll find a sweet spot where all three are involved. And this, you're not going to turn it in. You know, you scribble it. But begin to put down kind of where are most of your activities. And I'll give it away. I mean, I think a lot of people find that most of their activities tend to be hands-on.
Yeah.
But
What do you mean exactly by the advocacy?
that would be more to speak out to change systems. Yeah.
Help me understand. Let me offer an example. We have people in our church that teach ESL, and they have an active ESL group. They're involved in church activities
Yeah.
as well. Where would you put that?
I put that here.
What is that?
So this would be the ESL example. Hands-on teaching of ESL classes.
But
It's
empowering
hands-on,
them.
but it's empowering. So I'd probably put it in that shaded area.
What would fit in, say, the empowerment advocacy area, just as an example?
Renee's got a
Is it
good
segue?
one.
It's a segue. I'll give a little bit of background on that before I specifically answer your question, but my presbytery was interested in beginning to form a partnership and working somewhere. We were looking at Central America and the hunger program. We're interested in hunger. Presbyterian World Mission is involved in many countries in a program called Joining Hands Against Hunger. It's a local network, and though they look different in every country that they're in because they really are a grassroots kind of a movement within that country. And we chose El Salvador. Our mission coworker, Christy Van Nostren, is there working. This is an instance where she's working for an agency, it's not the church, working for Joining Hands Against Hunger El Salvador. We began to put together a trip. So 8 of us went down to El Salvador to learn about what's going on there. This network is helping local farmers and women's cooperatives to be able to build sustainable agricultural practices and raise their families out of poverty. So we learned there that there's a problem with land ownership. Most of the land in El Salvador is held in the hands of maybe 14 different large families, wealthy families. So the local farmers don't necessarily have ownership of the land that they're farming. We also found out that there's gold in the northern region of El Salvador, and the current government had a moratorium on any kind of mining permits. But there was an election coming up that they weren't sure what was going to happen. Hadn't outlawed them, just wasn't issuing any new permits. And in order to mine gold, we went to this anti-mining group that was part of the network. We learned that in order to extract the gold out of the soil in El Salvador, they use cyanide. And the byproduct of cyanide, it gets into the water system, poisons the water systems, and it poisons them for thousands and thousands of years. So there's a lot of different issues that's going on. There's companies like Monsanto who are going over there and planting huge crops of genetically modified seed that have to be purchased from Monsanto. It's not sustainable, it's not agricultural. So there are a lot of issues that are going on that are fighting against the Joining Hands Against Hunger network in El Salvador. So Christy is down there hands-on working with them in terms of educating them, but that also empowers them to be able to do this sustainable agriculture. But they're also educating them in ways of how to change the political system in El Salvador. They just had an election. And it's not quite a success, a victory yet, but because the party that they wanted to elect, and again, they were out advocating and educating the populace about who to elect and why. They didn't win the majority, so there has to be a runoff election. But the good news is that the people are empowered there now. So that is an example of where all of those are coming together. And we learned that when our trip was just before the initiative was on the ballot here in California about labeling genetically modified foods. So of course we came back and advocated for, of course it didn't pass because the corporations have a lot of money to counter those, but what we can do here locally in this country, I don't think I'll ever buy gold again. I didn't know that before I went over there, and I do have a gold wedding ring, but I will not buy gold again. I will advocate for labeling of genetically modified seeds. I will, do those things that I understand, choices that I make here affect those families in El Salvador. So, and if you did get the Mission Crossroads magazine, I don't know if we've got one of that issue, but it was not the latest issue, but the just past issue. It's got the 3 catalysts on the front of it. The story about our trip to El Salvador is in that magazine, so anyway, shameless
So
plug.
there are a lot of different ways you can do it. In the Toxic Charity book, I think there was another example of a soup kitchen, hands-on, where they began to find out that some of the people who were receiving food actually could cook food really well and wanted to open their own restaurant. So they empowered them to be able to open their own restaurant. And then I think there was an advocacy piece as well of, having to kind of lobby to get certain zoning, changes and things done. So there are ways to bring all that in, employ the different gifts that you have in your congregation, and go deeper. Yes?
I am involved in giving groceries and health ministry, taking blood pressure and blood sugar. Under what does that fall?
That would be hands-on.
Hands-on.
Definitely hands-on. But it does, the one slide that I had up a little bit before is kind of this question, what about giving money? Where does that fall? And really that enables all three of those things. When you give, you can enable people to do hands-on work. You can change the environment in a way that's empowering, and you can provide for advocacy. And I've heard congregations just kind of lament. They say, all we do is give money, you know? And I would say, don't feel badly about that. You've been entrusted with resources from God and are called to be good stewards of that.
And what I would suggest is if you're feeling that way, begin to talk with the agencies, or if it's a mission coworker in some other place in the world, begin talking to them about what has your money been doing. Build that relationship. Understand the impact of what your money is doing. I mean, that's, you know, God, as Rachel said, God calls us to be stewards of all that we're entrusted with, and money is one of those things. And the reason Rachel and I are working is because our mission coworkers need the money to keep them out in the field. So, you know, it is very important. But don't let it stop there. Make the connection with the relationship. Our mission coworkers will communicate with you via email, Skype, letters. You know, as Rachel said, they write blogs. So there's lots of ways to be in relationship along with the monetary gift that you're giving as well.
Because you really are our ties. You know, we've got those ties between the boats, and we want to be